All right, good morning. I'm John Gagne. I'm the author of Misguided Patriots. Misguided Patriots is a book I wrote and just recently published that was inspired by the lives of my parents in the CIA. Growing up, both my mom and dad were in the CIA. And what I want to talk about this morning is their involvement in recruiting. And I think it's safe to say that after being stood up in 1947, which is the year my mother joined the CIA, their number one problem was recruiting and creating this network of qualified people that could be trusted. And that's really true with every organization, but I'm sure for the CIA that was their number one problem. And we know that because of that and because of the lack of staff, that a lot of people were wearing multiple hats in the CIA back then, and so they were involved in a lot of different things. And while my parents were involved in multiple different things, one thing we know for sure they were involved in was recruiting. And we know that for a couple of reasons. One is that when my father got his master's and PhD at the University of Maryland, it was really focused on testing and counseling and career placement for people, which is obviously recruiting related. And then my mother, after my father died in the middle 60s, she actually talks about, on one of her audio tapes, she actually talks about how they've asked her, at this point later in her career to work for them doing recruiting in Austin, Texas, and how they give her a job recruiting there. So we know they're involved in recruiting, and what I wanted to do is just take a minute. I'm gonna present you just a brief snippet that comes out of my father's doctoral thesis that he wrote at the University of Maryland back in 1957, and then I'll talk to you about a little bit more about what I think this means.
These vocational interests, values, and goals must themselves be compromised with each other and with certain pertinent reality factors in the environment. This again is a complex interaction which may in fact even involve a reconstitution of some of the individual's basic interests, values, and goals in light of external reality. This also is a reversible relationship which may in fact even involve a reevaluation of some of the basic factors within and without the individual.
Okay, I'm back. So as part of solving this problem of this human resource problem of trying to get all these talented people, my father goes to work at the University of Maryland and begins working with a couple other guys, a guy named Sandy Aston, a guy named Tom Magoon. They come up with this system for setting up these testing and counseling centers at all the universities across the country, where they actually give people aptitude tests and then tell the people what they think that they're good at. And based on this testing, they say you're going to make a great welder, or you're going to make a great scientist, or you're going to make a great test pilot, or whatever different thing it is. And my father writes extensively in his master's thesis and doctoral dissertation about how they go about actually using this information after the testing is done. So after they've identified this person that they want to go into the CIA, he talks about how they can actually change the person's values and perceptions of reality to a point where they want to be a CIA agent. So they create this feedback loop where they give the guy a test, then they bring him in and they tell him what the results of the test meant and what it meant that he was good at, and they do it in a way where they have this conversation with this repeated feedback and conversation back and forth, where they actually change the person's perceptions of themselves and what's important to them and what they like and what they feel like they need to do. They actually can change that by these repeated testing and qualification feedback loops that they do. So while the objective is to find these talented people and direct them to the agency, and then later, of course, to possibly to other, they're taking the best guys for themselves, but they also send people to the Air Force or Navy or other research institutions, whatever things help the national interest. But while they're figuring out how to do this and get the best people for the CIA, they discover the power of these feedback loops when talking to people. And my father writes a great deal about it, about how you can actually change a person's reality through these repeated feedback efforts where it's a back and forth, as opposed to traditional propaganda where you try to change public opinion by giving them the same message over and over and over. It's completely different than the traditional propaganda, and it's the use of these loops where the person actually gives you a response, and then you feed it back to them, and by doing that, you can significantly change their view of reality. And then, of course, that grows over time into this much bigger, gate program and convincing the right people to want to do the right things for the national interest. But additionally, that concept of the feedback becomes the fundamental driving force behind the ARPANET and creation of the internet. And so, when back in the 50s you had the option, or even in the 60s, of having a TV station that you turned on, a TV network that you turned on, and programs just came at you, or you had a radio station that came on and you just listened to whatever programming was there. That eventual drive from that to cable TV, where you could select from all these different stations, which was a form of feedback, to where as we progressed, then you could actually stream television, and platforms like Netflix would look at what you were watching and then use your selections and feed it back to you by giving you this set of programs that says, hey, we think this is stuff that you're going to like. And so they end up being able to reinforce or even change, according to my father, change your view of reality based on utilizing these feedback loops. And then when you move that forward through the internet and the whole development of social media and likes and comments, you see that it's all grown out of this original discovery of the importance of these feedback loops that my father writes about. And so this progression from the 1950s, through these, simple testing programs, and then feedback, telling people what they're good at, that kind of thing, on an individual level, they progress into the 60s, 70s, 80s, and by the time Admiral Inman moves to Austin and sets up MCC, which if you don't know about, you might want to just read about, and sets up MCC, and the internet, the ARPANET really starts turning into the internet. You've got these CIA guys heavily involved in this whole development of this internet that provides an incredible amount of this feedback, which is exactly what my father wrote about, that allows you to change the perception now, not of individuals of what reality is, but change the perception of whole populations of what reality is. And it's if you just sit around and think about that for a little while, it's a little bit scary when we look at the fact that we're carrying these phones around with us, and that it's really, the best tool that they were able to find for changing people's idea of who they were and what they should be doing. And it's just something to think about this morning. And buy my book, Misguided Patriots, Amazon.
These vocational interests, values, and goals must themselves be compromised with each other and with certain pertinent reality factors in the environment. This again is a complex interaction which may in fact even involve a reconstitution of some of the individual's basic interests, values, and goals in light of external reality. This also is a reversible relationship which may in fact even involve a reevaluation of some of the basic factors within and without the individual.